Hey everyone, Mr. Skelton here. I'm doing something a little different today. We're doing some constructions, and I'm going to ask you to construct 4 geometric figures today. You're going to construct a congruent segment, you're going to construct an angle, you're going to construct a perpendicular bisector, which is a new term, and we'll explain that later, and you're also going to construct an angle bisector, which is something new. So we're going to jump right into it. The first thing we're going to construct is a segment. And you can see right here I kind of highlighted the word congruent. We talked about that yesterday in class. There's the symbol right above it. Congruent basically just means the same or equal to. Okay? So you have in front of you, or hopefully you received a contractor. This is a combination of a compass, a protractor, and a straight edge. There's a lot of information on here, and we're not going to get into every little detail. I'm just going to give you the basics so that you can have some success when doing some basic constructions. Okay? So the first thing, we're going to construct a congruent segment. The first thing we want to do is we want to create a segment that is longer than the one that's provided to us. Okay? So just take your straight edge, and obviously you can see the one to the right is longer than number 1. I'm going to mark an endpoint. And this endpoint right here is going to be kind of the same endpoint that is right here. And this one's pretty basic to do. All you want to do is, you'll notice this brass circle. You're going to use that a lot today. You want to put that brass circle right over the original segment and put your finger on it and kind of hold it down, put some pressure. Now you should still be able to slide this part of your contractor. Now what you want to do, you have a lot of holes on this contractor. Basically you want to move and slide this until you find a hole that matches up with the other endpoint. And in my case, it's the number 57 in red. And you're going to put your pencil in that hole, and you're just going to slide it back and forth. Now don't forget what hole you put your pencil in. I put it in 57 because you're going to take that brass circle, bring it right over to your other segment, put that brass circle right over it, put your thumb or finger down, put some pressure, find 57, and make that little swipe, just like that. And there's your congruent segment. Okay? Go ahead and hit pause and try 2 and 3 on your own. And when you come back, we'll move on to the next construction. All right, moving on. We are moving to the next, whoa, get you on the paper here. We're going to construct a congruent angle. Straighten this out here for you. Okay? Everybody see that okay? Sweet. All right. A little dead air there. Always fun. Okay. You want to construct first, or draw, a ray that is longer. Very similar to what you did on the first one, constructing a congruent segment. All right? Next, I'm going to put my endpoint here. I'm going to take my brass circle, and I'm going to put it on the original angle in number 4. You're going to put your finger down on that brass circle, give it some pressure, and you want to make a kind of a half circle swoop. And it can be any number you want, but it needs to be inside of the 2 rays. So I'm going to pick 40. You can pick anything you want. Now remember, again, where your pencil is at, it's on 40. Okay, make a swoop there. You're going to pick up your contractor, bring it right over to the other endpoint, and make that exact same swoop. Put your pencil in at 40, or in my case 40, and you're going to make a decent half circle there, just like that. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to figure out this distance. I'm going to kind of darken in the points, but we need to figure out and copy this little half swoop here. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take your brass circle and you're going to put it at the bottom of that ray. Okay? And you're going to move your contractor just like you did before, and you're going to slide it until one of those little holes crosses over that point that I drew. Now mine looks like 26. If you have the same contractor as me, it should be at 26. And you're going to make just a little tiny swoop. Just remember where you put your pencil in, number 26. And you're going to repeat that process over here. Now I'm going to make a little point here. Bring my brass circle over. Put some pressure down with my finger. And I remember that I put my pencil in number 26, so I find 26 and make that little swoop. And the last step is to take your straight edge You're going to match up your endpoint with the intersection of those two swoops. Put some pressure on your contractor with your finger. Draw your straight line, and there you go. Okay? Try number 5, and I'm not sure if number 6 is the same thing or not. It is. 6 and 7. You can go ahead and give those a try. Those are still constructing angles. Okay? Go ahead and hit pause and try those. And if you need to rewatch the video to go over how I constructed those, go ahead and rewind. Moving on. All right, so now we're going to get into a new term, perpendicular bisector. Really, there's 2 key words here. One of them you should know, perpendicular. Perpendicular just means the intersection of 2 lines or segments that make 90 degrees. All right? And actually, over on number 9 here, I'm just going to do a really rough sketch of what this should look like, a perpendicular bisector. Okay? This is not how you construct them, so take note. But I think we've talked about in class how you should have 2 lines intersecting and they meet and form a 90-degree angle. Usually it's in red. I don't know if you can, hopefully you can see some color there, but usually it's red. Now you may be wondering why I put those tick marks in there. We've talked about tick marks before, and usually they're in red. That means that this right here is a midpoint. It also means it's a bisector. So bisect, if something is bisected, it means cut in half. Okay? When something is bisected, there's 2 kinds of bisectors that we're going to talk about. A perpendicular bisector and an angle bisector. A perpendicular bisector cuts the segment in half perfectly. Acts like a midpoint. Okay? An angle bisector cuts the angle in half. You need to know that the word bisector, whenever you see that, you're going to get 2 equal or congruent somethings, whether it's segments or angles. Okay? So I'm going to show you how to construct this. This is a pretty easy one to do. It's really just 2 steps. So the first thing you want to do is you want to take your brass circle. You have the 2 endpoints. I'm looking at number 8 here. You're going to put your brass circle down. Okay? And you want to pick a random point that is longer than half of the segment. That's important. So I'm just going to go down to, like, I see number 48. And you're really going to draw a big swooping half circle. It's okay that it's going into my directions. And remember where your pencil is at, 48. Okay? I put my pencil in 48. That's what it should look like. Now, you're going to actually take your contractor and flip it around so it's almost quote-unquote upside down. Put your brass circle on the other end point. Find number 48 again, and you're just going to repeat that same swoop. Okay? Looks like that. Kind of looks like an Under Armour sign or a fish, right? Now the 2 points that are important are the intersection of the 2 swoops. So I'm going to kind of darken those in here for you. The last step is just taking your straight edge and lining up those 2 points and drawing a straight line right in between them. And there's your perpendicular bisector. Here's your 90-degree angle, completely perpendicular, and these segments are congruent. If I put some points in here, call it just ABC, when this is a perpendicular bisector right down that you drew, that you constructed, we know that AB is congruent to BC. Okay? Go ahead and try 10 and 11 since I dirtied up number 9 there. Go ahead and try 10 and 11. If you need to rewatch it, go ahead and do that. Hit pause, give it a shot. When you're done, check back in. All right, last but not least, the angle bisector. Again, let's review real quick. I want you to write down what bisector means. 2 congruent somethings. That's a terrible definition. I say somethings because they could be segments or angles. So on the last example, we focused on 2 congruent segments. That was a perpendicular bisector. Right now we're going to focus on an angle bisector, so we get 2 congruent angles. Okay? This is a construction of an angle bisector. Here we go. Take your contractor, brass circle, goes on the end point. Put some pressure down with your index finger, and again, you're just going to pick a random number that has a hole, and it's got to be inside of the ray. So I'm going to pick 30. Take that back. I'm going to pick 40. Okay? And I'm just going to make a swoop and make sure that swoop crosses both rays of the angle. I picked 40. Looks something like that. I'm going to darken in my intersection points. Okay? I'll just call this A and call this B, just for references. Now, next step. And you're going to repeat this next step twice. You're going to take your brass circle, you're going to put it on A. You're going to pick any number you want, but just remember what it is. I'm going to pick 30. And you're just going to make a swoop kind of out in the middle of this angle, just roughly. Just make sure you're somewhere in the middle. Remember where your pencil's at. Mine's at 30. You're going to pick up your contractor, you're going to take your brass circle, and you're going to put it at point B, and you're going to repeat that process. So brass circle at B, put your finger down, find 30, and repeat. And you should see those two swoops intersecting each other. This is the intersection point of those two swoops, and that's what we want. Last step, take your straight edge, put your pencil on the vertex of the angle, find the intersection of the two swoops, connect the dots, and there is an angle bisector. Again, this is your vertex. We talked about that. That's where an angle is kind of created, right? It's where your two rays come together. I do want to show you, when we talk about congruent angles, we don't use tick marks. We only use tick marks to kind of describe segments that are congruent, right? When we're talking about a perpendicular bisector or a midpoint. When we talk about congruent angles, you'll see these little quarter swoops or half swoops that look something like this, okay? When you see a textbook or you see a quiz or give you a homework assignment, when you see this, when you see these markings, that indicates two congruent angles, all right? And that's important because you got to get used to seeing all these different markings in geometry. So that's how you construct an angle bisector. Again, two new terms today: perpendicular bisector, angle bisector. Biggest thing I can drive home to you is this word right here, bisect. When you see that word in geometry, please understand that you're going to get two congruent somethings. And make sure you make those markings on your picture if it isn't already marked for you. Okay? If you have any questions on any of these constructions, just rewind, pause, rewind, go back and watch the video again. And then when you come to class tomorrow, we can go over the constructions, and we'll practice some more in class tomorrow. So any loose ends that you have, you're still not sure, I'll be happy to help you out and walk you through it, okay? I hope you have a great rest of the day. Take care, and we'll see you later.